Right. So for the crayon roll, we're gonna start with the preparation part, which is very important to have right tools, materials, and a pattern ready before we start the project. So let's have a look at the tools which you will need to make the crayon roll. So to cut the fabric, you can cut it with the rotary cutter, or you can use the fabric scissors. For the paper pattern, it's better to cut it with the separate paper scissors rather than using your fabric ones, which would get very quickly blunt. And then these little snips or snippets are very useful when you're cutting the threads very close to the crayon roll, because there are lots of lines we're gonna stitch. The main tools will be the sewing machine. We're gonna actually sew with the sewing machine. Some people ask me if they can use the just stitch by hand, but I think it would take very long time. So for this sewing project, I would recommend to have a sewing machine. But we will be doing some hand stitching. Needle and something to protect your finger symbol would be very useful. To mark the lines, it's from my personal experience, it's better to use the fabric marker pen because they have very fine ends and the lines are more precise and there are going to be lots of them. In the past, I have used the chalk, but that one will have to be really sharp. Otherwise, you're going to have a very thick line drawn, and then you can misguide the line. So sometimes if it's like 2 to 3 millimeters wide line, then it will move everything along, and then the crayon roll pockets might not necessarily be wide enough. So for that, I would recommend the fabric marker pen. With the fabric marker pen, it's better to test it on fabric first, because some of them evaporate when you press the hot iron on, and the others do quite opposite. When you press the hot iron on, they leave the mark permanently. So read the instructions or test it before you apply. To measure, we're gonna use the ruler and a tape measure. I really recommend to get a quilting ruler because it has the all the lines with the measurements. It's much quicker to do. You can do it at the right angle, and as long as it's approximately 30 centimeter long on one side, you can cut your fabric precisely. Pins and the basting thread, which is easily breakable, a cotton one, is also very handy to hold the seams in place. And lastly, it will be the unpicker, because sometimes when you do sewing, things do happen that you have to go several stitches back, or you have to unpick it. So this is one of the essential tools to have when you do any sewing project. And also I use the screwdriver to turn the corners, or to make them sharp. But you can also use the ends from the scissors. Just make sure that they don't break the corner edge and they don't come up on the other side, because the edges are quite sharp. But instead of a screwdriver, there are some other tools specifically done for turning corners. I'm not sure if I mentioned the iron. Yeah, iron is also one of the main tools during the sewing process for all sewing projects. It just makes it so much easier to construct the garments or the crayon roll, whatever you're using, because again, it can hold the seams in place. Sometimes you can't get into the seams later on. So getting an iron board or some kind of little iron desk, it's also very useful for any sewing project. So with that, we're gonna move now to different types of materials you can use for the crayon roll. Okay, so here we have the crayon roll, and we're gonna now have a look at the material. As you can see, the crayon roll comes from two pieces of fabrics you constructed. One is on the outer layer. This is when you roll it up, and then which is also shown on the inside for pockets. And then you need some other fabric which goes in inside of the crayon roll. And I quite like to use combination of slightly thicker fabric, like the heavier weight linen with the lighter weight cotton, or two medium weight cottons, something which is more um, heavier, but not too heavy or thick. So when you starting to join the seam, especially when you have quite a few layers, that is not too difficult to sew. So I am now gonna show you a few examples of the fabric which you can use, and then also what type of cord, and also what type of thread you can use for the crayon roll. Mm, So for the outer layer, you can pick any cotton, printed, or plain. You can use linen fabrics. You can upcycle any cotton garments. This was actually done from the skirt. Different types of cottons, they come in a different weights. And you can also use the plain, for example, linen on top, which you can embroider or use the applique, or you can use sashiko stitch, different type of stitches on top to decorate it. Then you have a linen which is slightly textured that can also be combined together. I quite like to combine printed fabric with the plain fabric inside. For example, those two could work very well together. Or if I had something like this, um, let me move this away. Um, I could combine this one with the plain linen, or if I wanted to use a slightly contrasting color for inside, or even in a stripe or polka dots, whatever you choose, whatever you like, it can work very well as long as it's the weight will hold the crayons inside, because sometimes some students decided to use beautiful cotton fabrics, but they were so light that we had to use interfacing for at least one side, because it would be too flimsy for the crayon roll. For the inner of the inside layer, you can use plain, again, flannel works very well on both. Or you can use blends of linen and cotton. Again, cotton, canvas is also very good, or thicker calico. And I do like this type of linen, which is slightly firmer, but still has a bit of softness, and it's easy to sew. I've seen some people actually buying, I've seen them online also. It looks like a placemat, and use only one layer and folding the edges, and inserting a ribbon on the side. But this would be only one layer, and you would really have to make sure that you have enough in length to fit them all in. So for our project, we actually gonna use this two layer of the fabric. When you deciding what fabric to put inside, this is, for example, canvas, and this is linen. You will also need to decide what type of cotton thread or polyester thread you're gonna use for stitching. Um, for example, this one is using contrasting thread, um, which is visible on the inside and less visible on the outer layer. Here it is more visible also on both use as a contrast stitch, but at the edges here, long edges, I used binding to bind the edges. If you would like to use this technique, you can use the pattern, but remove the seam allowance along the long edges because you're not going to fold anything. You're basically going to bind the raw edges as they are. If you don't want to create a sort of contrasting stitch, you can choose something which blends very well with both colors or both layers. So in that case, choosing pink, cream colored thread, it's not visible on both sides. Here we are going to have a look at some types of cording you can use. I like to use the macrame, cotton macrame cord, which comes in a different thickness. Some of them are very sort of smooth. You can make your own twisters on your own, or maybe children can help. Slightly thicker cords, or you can make one yourself from the fabric you are using, as long as it's a lighter weight, or create from the bias tape, which you can just simply fold in half and stitch maybe 2 to 3 millimeters from the edge and tie the knots at the end, or you can even fold them and then stitch. Liberty Print also does really nice printed tapes. If you want it maybe to have a maybe plain crayon roll and put something contrasting only as a cord. I also quite like the idea of using children's hand knitting or twisted cords, twisters which they can do themselves. I actually made a crayon roll which has only got a loop, so it is not the cord is not inserted inside of the seam. It's actually just the loop only, and that way they can put the cord they like inside. So those are all the alternatives. I think that they could be very nice way of personalization. So just to summarize the material we're gonna use, you need the outer layer, inner layer, the cord, which is 90 to maybe 1 meter long or 100 centimeters. And for a larger size, add another maybe 20 centimeter for 20 by 20 crayon roll, and 24 by 24 I would probably 40 centimeters extra. You can always cut them off if you need to afterwards, but it's better to have them longer rather than shorter. And the ends we are gonna then tie with a little knot so they don't unfray. In terms of threads, as I said to you, you can use something which blends in with both colors, which I think this color looks really good. Or even the darker shade that also blends in very well. This one maybe slightly more visible. That's probably not as, this is more browny. If I wanted to go really with the contrasting stitch, I could use something very bright. If you are not confident in your sewing skills, or you feel like that your stitches are not straight enough, then I definitely recommend to try and stitch with something which blends in both colors. And also, if you are having maybe the bottom color, for example, white, and this is purple, sometimes you could use on your sewing machine at the bottom white thread, and for the top part you use the purple, for example. But then it's gonna be lots of back stitching, which means you will be pressing a reverse button, so all the stitches are secure. If I show you here, those places where the crayon rolls are gonna be inserted in, they need to have be backstage. And sometimes the bottom thread comes on top, and it doesn't make it look really nice. So for that reason, I do prefer if both colors are the same, but you can always try and see what works for you. So with that, let's start